Have you ever been standing out on the beach one of those days when the waves are really crashing and the wind is really blowing? Kind of maybe something like this scene behind me here of the west coast of Cork here in Ireland. But if you've been in one of those situations, then you know you're standing before an immense power. You can feel it in your bones. You can feel it in the mist that's hitting your face. So in those situations, have you ever thought maybe, is there some way that we might capture even a small part of this energy that's out there for our sustainable energy needs? Well, if you have, then you will know what I'm talking about here in this little introduction video. We're going to be talking about wave energy. In 2021 and 2022, the world energy consumption, electricity consumption year, was between 22,000 and 23,000 terawatt hours. There was a study done in 2015 by some scholars, and they wanted to figure out the maximum theoretical energy that can be derived from ocean waves. They determined that number was around 32,000 terawatt hours. Now there have been subsequent studies that have looked at, well, of that what's really practical to extract, and of that there have been studies that range anywhere from 26,000 terawatt hours to 29,500 terawatt hours. So in addition to this abundance of wave energy, there's also a number of other advantages. Its energy density, the energy density of waves, is more than 10 times that of solar or wind energy per meter. The availability of ocean wave energy is around 90%. Around 90% of the time you're going to be able to extract energy from those waves. Whereas with wind and solar, that number is about 20%, 30%. Wave energy has a minimal environmental impact, whereas solar and wind, well, their environmental impact is at least not insignificant, mainly in the production. Wave energy is predictable. You know what your sea states are going to be more than a day in advance of when you'll be extracting the power, which is going to make it a lot easier to bid into the electricity market. And wave energy is complementary to both wind and solar. As you know, you want to get solar energy during the daytime, and wave energy is stronger at night. And wave energy follows wind energy by about 2 to 3 hours. So that's going to smooth your supply curve. So with the abundance of wave energy that's out there, and with all these other advantages, you might very well ask yourself, well, why hasn't it been done yet? Well, my name is Dr. Luke Smith. I work with a team of researchers on a project called SafeWave. And we are trying to understand some of these non-technical barriers to wave energy and try to figure out ways that we might can overcome. Now, are there technical barriers? There are technical barriers, of course. Waves are incredibly complicated. Each wave is also unique. It's not the same. It's not blowing at the same, it's not moving at the same speed, same direction. You know, there's a lot you have to consider there. Designing a power takeoff device for these wave energy converters is also really complicated. You know, the actual process of extracting energy from the wave. You're dealing with a low frequency oscillating motion that has a lot of force behind it, and that's just kind of difficult to figure out how to extract energy from that. And of course, marine conditions, as evidenced from this behind me, which is just a regular day. This is not a storm or anything, it's just a regular day on the west coast of Ireland. Marine conditions are harsh. They're really hard on man-made objects, and especially anything complicated. But engineers have been working on these issues for about 50 years. The first wave energy device was built back in 1910. So the concept has been around for a long time. But it's really after the 1973 oil crisis that people started really looking into finding other ways to get energy. And so wave energy was one of those. So then for 50 years they've been working on that. And the thing is, they may have done too good of a job. Because we have hundreds, literally hundreds of different wave energy devices. A lot of unique ways to extract energy from the ocean. Though that sounds good, sounds like it's promising, there is some problems with that, right? There is no single industry solution. So So there's no, like what you have with wind turbines, the horizontal axis wind turbines. The industry's kind of coalesced around that model. With solar, industry's kind of coalesced around the idea of PV panels, photovoltaic panels. With this great diversity of devices, that also means that there's no unified supply chain. Different devices might be able to use different parts of the same supply chain, but you don't have that unified effort to going into producing these devices because they're each different. There is no regulatory agreement on wave energy devices. There's not even a agreed upon way to evaluate a site for wave energy potential. There's no even agreement about optimal placement of these devices. There's onshore devices, there's nearshore devices, and there's offshore devices. So there's been no real market uptake of wave energy. And this is where we need your help. So with the Safe Wave program, we have different partners that are working on different aspects. So we have partners that are working on the environmental risk. We have some working on the maritime spatial planning. We've got other partners working on regulatory hurdles, and then some working on the consenting process. The University College Cork has been tasked to take the lead with enlisting the help of coastal communities in Ireland, France, Portugal, and Spain to co-develop a broadened understanding of ocean literacy that encompasses an increased role for seaside communities in wave energy development. That's kind of a lot of word salad there. Let me unpack that a little bit. So UCC's part of this EU grant is to work on a public engagement program that centers around ocean literacy and wave energy. So it's got two aspects. Now with the ocean literacy part, UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, they have spent a lot of time and developed this extensive program on ocean literacy. It's part of the UN's program for the Decade of the Ocean, which is 2021 to 2030. So this program is built around 7 principles of ocean literacy. I won't go into all of those right now, but just to mention that one of them, principle number 6, has a direct correlation or a direct bearing upon wave energy development. This principle, number 6, says that humans and the oceans are inexorably linked. So, you know, they are tied together, unavoidably. Now, I am not about to preach to you about this fact that you living on the coast, you know that your life is caught up with the ocean and that you affect the ocean and that the ocean affects you. You see this every day, depending on where you're at. As far as how we affect the ocean, well, we see it in our reduced fish catch of certain species, because we may have overfished them. We see it in the coral reef deaths, which is caused by the increased acidity of the ocean, which results from the ocean having to absorb more carbon. We see it in the trash that washes up on shore. And then on the reverse side, how the ocean affects us. Well, we see this in the increased severity of storms that lash our coast. We see it in the intensity of the flooding events and the increased number of flooding events that we have along our coast. And we see it in the algae blooms that cause fish die-offs, and it can make swimmers sick if they happen to be out on one of those red tides. So this is nothing new to you, I'm sure. But maybe exploring how wave energy could help you have a positive impact on the ocean by reducing the amount of carbon it has to absorb, and how the ocean in turn will be helping to provide your community with a little bit of an economic benefit. Well, this kind of trade-off, or this kind of symbiosis, or mutual benefit, it might not be something that you have considered. So currently, marine renewable energy developers, they see more value in offshore wind power than they do wave. Ocean wind turbines are amazing pieces of machinery. They're huge, and they're getting larger. So your developers, they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they can spend on these devices. And the more they're able to invest, the more they're going to get on the return. And especially as turbines get larger and larger, they will get more return on that same investment. So China, for instance, has just developed, just unveiled in January, an 18 megawatt wind turbine device. Just a couple of years ago, when I was doing my dissertation, the largest one was 12 megawatts. So just in a few short years, they've already gone up 50% in size. Now, that turbine that I'm talking about was about 20 million euros, right around there. So this new one that China has developed, it's going to be a little bit more, it's going to be more than 20 million. I don't know what, the price hasn't been revealed yet, but it's not going to be 50% more. So you see how you're getting more bang for your buck with the investment, if you have hundreds of millions of dollars or euros to spend. So this turbine that China has developed, they claim can power 40,000 homes. Now, a wave energy device, a wave energy converter, as they're called, they're kind of small. You're looking at the largest ones are 2 to 3 megawatts. And those are for the largest ones. But if your home, if your community only has, say, 2,000 homes and not 40,000 homes, a 3 megawatt wave energy device would be able to satisfy the energy needs of around 2,000 homes. So if you believe that the future of the electricity system is some sort of combination of a large, centralized distribution and transmission system and maybe smaller microgrids and local consumption of electricity, well, if that is the case, then we can begin to see where there might be a place for these wave energy devices in that kind of smaller microgrid kind of situation with communities along the coast. So now let's just talk a little bit about what you might be able to do as a community to help encourage the development of these wave energy devices for the benefit of your community. The first thing I would say is do not go out and buy a wave energy converter right now. Though there are some out there that are starting to prove themselves, they really are. The jury's still out on how survivable these devices are. There's been a long history of devices not being able to last out in the ocean, unfortunately. And additionally, they're still kind of expensive. So I would not go out and buy one. But there are things that you as a community can do to improve the likelihood that we would have this future energy source. Let's see, so the thing is, as a community, you can't be a guinea pig to these innovations, because they are new, and there's a lot of different kinds. So you don't want your community to be an experiment. But what if you were able to invite these wind energy converter companies to the seas off adjacent to your community and allow them to be able to prove their device? So this would be in the latter stages of a wind energy converter device, what's called a technology readiness level of somewhere between 7 and 9. So that's right before pre-commercial stages. And so they would be able to prove that their device is reliable, that it is survivable, and they would also be able to prove the performance of the device. And if you had a number of these devices in competition with each other, then we would be able to judge that better. Currently, there are, of course, a number of test sites all over the world for these devices, but the test sites generally just focus on one technology type, one technology. This would be a situation where your community could serve as a proving ground to make the standard, where all the devices have to prove themselves in the same waters and at the same time. So that is a benefit. Now, different communities would also have different sea states. For instance, a community off the west coast of Ireland, one off Portugal, they would attract developers with maybe some devices that are able to withstand those rough seas and also able to extract the most power, from a wave in that kind of situation. A community off the east coast of Spain, however, has a different kind of sea state. And so a device there, you might be looking at one that could benefit from the give and take between waves. There's this kind of motion right here is constantly going on in between waves. So that might be an example of why different devices would be good in different waters. This could be a low-risk way for your community to enter into the energy transition. There are certain economic benefits as a community that you could receive from hosting this kind of program. You would get income from leasing some of the seafloor for the moorings of these devices. You would have job creation. You would have jobs in monitoring these devices. The company may train people to do the monitoring of the devices. The successful devices tend to be relatively simple in their mechanics. This is because when you put anything out in the ocean, you don't want to put something really complicated with a lot of hydraulics or a lot of electronics or anything out there because, as we mentioned, the ocean is rough. So there would still be regular maintenance that would have to be carried out on the devices, and this is something that local people could be trained to do. There's also transportation services to and from where the devices are situated out in the ocean, that local fishermen or pleasure boaters could provide those services to company officials or whoever needs to go out there. And then there's also indirect benefits. There'd be indirect benefits to your local services, hotels and restaurants, and also just other services that could be used at the test site. You would also have local grid upgrades. And I know a lot of you living along the coast have experienced power outages during storms. And a lot of you have mentioned that the structure and the power of the grid is not able to accommodate a lot of growth in the area. Because if you're on the coast, you tend to be at the very end of the line. Well, in this situation, you would have a substation right there as the lines are coming in for the ocean wave energy developers to channel the electricity they generate to the grid. So that's going to have that much more benefit. And in this way, you would be preparing for an energy future. Because you would be there during the whole proving of these devices, you would be used to them, and then you would be set to take advantage of this future when it does arrive. And it would help you would benefit from this more democratic, more reliable, less dependent on foreign imports, and less expensive energy system. So these actions that you can take now, they can possibly empower you to take charge of your own energy future. Not to have you suffer the overlords of a centralized distribution and transmission system, or be subject to the whims of the oil markets. So these are all good advantages. And something that I'd like you to think about. And so if you have, if this sounds interesting to you, and you would like to learn more, if you could, would you please start by filling out this survey that's in the information section to this video, right below. If you could do that, it takes 10 minutes or less to do the survey, and that will give us an idea about how people think about this and where we can go from here. All right, thank you very much. Let's get going.